Resident Representative of the United Nations Development Programme here in Türkiye, and she joins us from Ankara. Louisa, thank you so much for your time. We had a report at the top of the programme about the challenges of simply removing rubble. Eye-opening for me. I didn't realise the health implications if that process is not carried out correctly. Could you just tell us more about that?
Yes, I think, your correspondent has just been describing just how unprecedented the impact of this series of earthquakes has been. And that applies to the rubble that needs to be cleared as well. At UNDP, this is one of the tasks that we try to help with after disasters in many countries, is to ensure in what we call early recovery. So that means while the urgent emergency supplies are being taken to people, food and shelter and clothing, that we start to work on restoring something looking like normal life. So what we have here is extraordinary scale of destruction. We've heard from the Ministry of Environment, Urbanization, and Climate Change that more than 156,000 buildings have collapsed or will have to be demolished, containing 500,000 apartments. So this is a challenge on a huge scale. At UNDP, we've been trying to assess the total mass of this rubble. And what we arrive at are very, very, I would say, horrific figures of between 116 million and 210 million tons of rubble, taking up a volume of 100 million cubic meters. So these are big numbers, and I'm sure they're impressive, but we've been trying to translate this into human terms. So what we get, I'm an amateur runner. I run sometimes, and I run very slowly, but the farthest I've ever run is 10 kilometers. So 10 kilometers, if you think of running 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers, with rubble 1 meter deep, that's how much rubble that needs to be cleared. That's all together in one space. So 10 kilometers, 1 meter deep. So for comparison, Manhattan, the entire island of Manhattan, is 59 square kilometers. So this is rubble bigger in area at 1 meter deep than Manhattan. It's bigger than the Istanbul airport, the biggest airport in the world. It's around the meter size of 8 Heathrow airports. So it really is a huge amount of rubble. And as you said, this can't just be dumped somewhere. There are huge risks to taking an overly hasty approach to rubble. So we need to understand what's in the rubble. Are there hazardous materials? What is the composition? Is it cement and steel, something else? Is there asbestos? Many of the buildings that came down were quite old. So at UNDP, what we promote and what we're working with the government to enact is to ensure that as much of this rubble is treated in an environmentally sound fashion. And what does that mean? That means that we recycle as much as is possible. In Nepal, where we did a similar undertaking, a much smaller disaster, we were able to recycle 90% of the rubble. In Türkiye, it will be a little bit harder given the different composition of the rubble. But first is to recycle, and second is to plan carefully where the rest of that waste and debris is disposed of. Often it's very tempting, especially in a crisis situation, to say, just put it in an empty space somewhere. Often those empty spaces are dry riverbeds or environmentally sensitive places when, if there's a flash flood, there will be another catastrophe. Often rubble can be dumped in areas where there's a water source, a sensitive drinking water supply. So we need to be careful of that. And as I said, to remove all the hazardous waste from it. And a third point is that you're showing some of the destroyed cultural heritage. We can't lump the destroyed cultural heritage with the more standard rubble. We need to take pains to ensure that we protect the relics so they can be conserved and restored properly in the future. So there's a huge task ahead. We're very keen to support. Obviously, the bulk of the burden is on the government, but at UNDP, we've appealed for $113.5 million to get started with this work. And we really look forward to contributing to this years-long effort in restoring normal life in Turkey's cities.
Louisa, I'm not sure if we've had, possibly I may have missed it, fulsome analysis of damage caused to underground systems. Systems, for example, that may carry water or sewage or gas, but you're talking very much above ground. How long can it take for the material that needs to be disposed of and cleared to contaminate water sources or to contaminate soil? Because I understand that actually soil can also be affected by it, which would have health implications for whether it be animals or growing crops or then the humans who consume those items.
No, there's clearly an imperative to move quickly. And as you're right, we need to look at all the possible environmental and health implications. And you're right, some of the damage will be invisible, that we need to be looking at the very important cisterns, water storage, water sources under the ground, which supply so much of the important drinking water, the clean water. And we do see that for the affected area, there is a caution not to drink water from the tap. So one of the things that UNDP is doing in the meantime is supplying the municipalities with a lot of disinfectant to substitute for the cleaning that can be done when we're confident of the quality of water. But we're very keen to help undertake a survey of all the different utilities and functions and the environmental services that could have been threatened by this very, very powerful earthquake series.
Briefly, if you don't mind, you did mention cultural heritage sites. Is there any understanding about how much damage has been done, if anything has survived, sort of restoration work that may have to be completed?
We know that the Ministry of Culture is undertaking a very careful survey. One of the sad things is that this is a site of such important cultural heritage, you know, that this is the crossroads of civilizations, and we have religious monuments going back thousands of years coexisting, and many of those have collapsed or been partly damaged. We do understand that most of the UNESCO protected areas have weathered the earthquake fairly well, but then it is an area where there are at least 10,000 cultural heritage monuments of note. And one of the ones that I have seen myself and have been in awe at is the Hatay Archaeological Museum, where there's a vast collection of wonderful mosaics. So some of that work needs to be done immediately to ensure that this invaluable cultural heritage is not exposed to the elements, is not left open to depredation. So a lot of work can be done to protect it in the meantime and then restore it later. And I think you're showing the footage of the Gaziantep citadel. One of the indications of the sheer power of this earthquake is you have monuments that have stood 2,000 years, basically seeming permanent fixtures in the landscape. And here, this was an earthquake so powerful that it took down the citadel walls. So it really is something that also needs to be addressed urgently. I know our focus has to be on people, on human beings, on the lives that are at risk, but our cultural existence, our identity comes also from these cultural heritage monuments. So we're also trying to work towards that end, to protect in the short term and then restore in the long term. But it would be a tragedy if this wonderful region, which I've had the pleasure to visit many times before the earthquakes, is just indescribable until you visit there and see how many different religions, cultures, histories are happily coexisting in the monuments. It would be a shame not to restore it to its full beauty and treasure.
Louisa Vinton of the UNDP, thank you so much indeed for your time, Louisa.
Thank you for having me.